Hi everyone, I'm Angie Komar from Train the Teacher, where I'm a teacher trainer and course director on the Trinity Cert TESOL. Welcome to the lesson on using games to promote language learning, which I find is an effective and engaging way of learning language, especially for young learners. So, which activities are games? R.F. Dearden from 1967 has a definition which suggests that any activity that takes the mind of the learners away from language as a focus or gives them enjoyment and satisfaction simply through participating can be called a game. So, many activities in the language classroom which generate laughter, enjoyment, and fun can fall under the general heading of play. The question asked by some is, should they be banned? And where does play stop being play and become active learning? So why use games? Well, because playing games is normal for children. They do it all the time with their friends, their family, or on their own. They're motivating. Games can add variety and fun in learning. They can either energize or settle down a class, and they can increase the level of interaction and participation in the class. They help increase communicative competence. Games promote active use of the target language and plenty of meaningful repetition. They provide hidden language practice. The focus is on the task, not on the language, and the language they use is authentic. The game is a sort of real-world activity. All aspects of language can be practiced through games, from pronunciation to the development of the 4 skills. Learners have to be creative with their use of language. There are links with language awareness. Games help reinforce new sounds, words, or structures introduced in another part of the class. There are links with cultural or intercultural awareness. Teachers can introduce a cultural or intercultural context within games, where students have the opportunity to play traditional games from cultures linked with the target language. Learners can discover how similar or different these games are. There are pedagogical benefits. Games promote the development of many other skills. They help develop concentration, memory, and, depending on the game, all 4 skills. And there are social benefits. Games develop confidence, social cohesion, and cooperation in the class. They help groups bond and build a positive atmosphere which improve group dynamics. Games should always have some kind of goal. This has the following effects. The goal ensures participation and is motivating for your learners. Students are using language naturally to communicate. Their focus is on the task, not the language, as I've said before. And this helps remove any inhibitions they might have. The closed task nature of the game, rather than the open-endedness of a discussion, is a very satisfying thing, so there is an outcome. Something is achieved. Now let's look at some of the games that children play at home or in the playground. The classification that you're about to see comes from S. Tyler from 1984, and according to this classification, the games or game-like activities that children engage themselves in help them develop different abilities, with some obvious overlaps in some cases. We'll look at each of these in turn. So the first one is conceptual games. These are games which develop one or more cognitive abilities in the child. These include the ability to categorize, identify similarities or differences of use, property, weight, and understand or express the notion of time. Such games include Odd Man Out and Spot the Difference. Number 2 is visual perceptual tasks. These are games which help the child develop abilities similar to the one that you looked at before, so perceiving similarities or differences, but this time it's mainly through the visual channel. They also help children understand space, size, location, and color. So picture bingo, memory games, and jigsaw puzzles are typical examples in this category. Number 3, auditory perceptual tasks. These are games or activities which concentrate on developing abilities similar to what we looked at before, but this time mainly through the acoustic channel, in other words, listening. These help children develop auditory perception skills. Musical chairs, Simon Says, or I went to the market and I bought a ... are examples of these. Number 4, fine motor skills. Activities such as tracing a route through a map, or cutting around a design, or filling it with color are examples where children are developing motor skills and coordinating movement. Number 5, artistic activities are those which aim to develop the child's awareness of the world of the arts, such as drawing, painting, or making collages. Number 6 is material play. This involves children manipulating materials such as clay, sand, water, plasticine, or any kind of matter where children can mold or change the shape of it. Making plasticine animals or making sandcastles on the beach or in the sandpit belong to this category. Number 7 is physical play. And this includes running, wrestling, rolling around the floor, playing hide and seek. Physical play helps children become aware of their body, its potential, and its limitations. Number 8 is representational object play. And this involves the use of small objects symbolizing the real world, such as toy cars, zoo animals, dolls, plastic food, or household items. Through these, the child can interact and learn more about the world and its workings. And finally, number 9, fantasy play. This is any kind of play in which the child steps out of his world or her world and enters the world of make-believe. For example, when they play house or teacher. These games help the child consolidate knowledge and awareness of behavioral patterns in the adult world and the interactive skills that go with them. This can be seen as a kind of rehearsal for when they will perform similar roles as adults. Games in the foreign language classroom. Let's now have a look at a number of well-known game-like activities commonly used in the foreign language classroom. Think about how they fit into one or more of Tyler's categories. Describe and draw. Player A describes a picture to player B, who listens to their partner and draws the picture. Find differences or similarities. Players A and B have a different picture each. Without looking at each other's picture, they exchange descriptions, trying to spot as many differences or similarities as they can within a time limit. So these are examples of games which fall under several categories: conceptual games, visual perception tasks, auditory perceptual tasks, and in the case of describe and draw, also falls under artistic activities. And here's an example of a spot the difference activity. This can either be done on paper, with each student looking at both pictures, but to make this even more communicative, one student can have one picture and their partner has the other. They can't look at each other's pictures and can only describe what they see in their own picture. Between them, they have to find however many differences there are, which you, as the teacher, will know in advance. To introduce a competitive element, the first pair to identify that all the differences correctly are the winners. Happy Families. This is actually a British card game. Groups of 4 players are dealt 4 cards each, and by asking in turn, they have to try and collect the 4 members of a family to win the game. If you can't buy the decks, you might want to spend the time to make your own sets. Role plays. Students can enact parts which may be based on conversations in a book, a situation outlined on a roll card, a picture showing people in a situation, a series of pictures, a video sequence, or simply some instructions given orally by the teacher. Puppet theatre. This is similar to a role play, but here children handle a puppet each and enact a short sketch. You might find that for shyer children, using puppets often helps them to come out of their shells a little bit as they're talking through the character. Find the order. Groups of pupils are given pictures making up a story. Each pupil has a picture. By describing their pictures to each other, they try to work out the sequence and tell the story to other groups. This is a great collaborative exercise which promotes cooperation between members of a group. Back to the board. This is a great game for reviewing vocabulary. Divide the class into 2 teams. One person from each team sits at the front of the classroom with their backs to the board. The teacher reveals or writes a vocabulary item on the board, and their teammates shout out descriptions or mimes what the word is for their teammates with their back to the board to guess. Because this game is fun and competitive, it can get really noisy, and watch out for cheaters. Board games. The pupils play a board game such as Snakes and Ladders, or one made especially for language practice. There are various templates of board games available on the internet, and you can easily tailor one to fit your particular learning objectives. Act your words. This is a fun game for slightly older learners. Learners are divided into groups which are given a set of cards with words or pictures. They have to perform a short sketch or make a story in which these words are used. When they present their story or sketch, The opposing teams have to guess what words they were trying to use. The group can then reveal their set of cards after the other groups have guessed. These games are for learners who are a little older. Learners can make their own board games for other students to play. The children should have had a fair amount of exposure to other board games, though, in order to have ideas on what their own game might look like and be about. Pictionary can also be a fun but potentially very noisy game, where a member of each team is called out to draw a picture. His fellow team players shout out words and must guess the word within a time limit. Running or wall dictation. A short or a longer paragraph, depending on your learner's age and ability, is stuck on a wall away from the class. A runner from each group runs back and forth dictating parts of the text to his or her group, who write it down word for word. Circle games. Students sit or stand in a circle, and each player adds a new element. Say, for example, the first player might say, "I like apples." The second player would say, "I like apples and oranges." The third player might say, "I like apples, oranges, and bananas," and so on. Each child must remember everything said by the previous players. What's really nice about this game is that it often fosters a sense of cooperation among the children, who try to help their teammates out by miming or giving clues to the item that their teammates have forgotten. Another common type of game, mingling games. Pupils move around the class and talk to each other, trying to find their partner or group members within the crowd. Their partner or group member may be someone with the other half of a picture, which must be described, or half a sentence, or the right building for a job, or the right home for an animal, or part of a collection of a group, such as a fruit, vegetable, animal, etc. So games have important, fun, pedagogical, and social benefits, but like all activities introduced by the language teacher in the classroom or in the schoolyard, is that they should also have clear linguistic objectives. You can emphasize this by going through some process language that they will need to use in the game before the game begins. And here are some tips on the delivery of these games and activities in the classroom. Repeat, review, and revise. Use short games to review vocabulary and phrases that you've already taught. Use chants, rhymes, and songs. These are great for movement and frequent repetition of vocabulary and phrases. Try not to focus too much on reading and writing. Leave these for when the children are a bit older. Focus on listening and understanding, building vocabulary, and the acquisition of short phrases. Concentrate also on speaking practice, starting with single words and short phrases, and gradually moving on to longer sentences and questions. Avoid abstract concepts and focus on concrete items that children understand and can relate to. For example, start with familiar topics such as colors, numbers, greetings, animals, fruit, food and drink, families, body parts, shapes, clothing, etc. Bring in real objects whenever possible, such as clothes to dress in or props for acting out little plays or stories. When you cannot bring in realia, Use whatever objects are available in your classroom and use colorful pictures of real items. Use stories. Stories are a great resource for preschool learners who will all want to hear the same stories told repeatedly. You can base any number of games and activities on these stories. And of course, be prepared. For example, practice telling stories before you go into the class and have your picture flashcards and any materials you might need ready. Now we're going to show you some websites with games for children. There are a huge number of websites accessible to us that have really good resources for English teachers, but here are a couple that we recommend. On the EFL Playhouse, you can browse through collections of educational games, songs, finger plays, action rhymes, craft ideas, printable materials, tongue twisters, and a whole lot more. This is one of the most well-known websites for English teaching resources, and from here you can borrow ideas that meet the needs of your learners. There are a lot of fun language games on this website, which is in line with the popular American TV show for kids, Sesame Street. On this website, you can find lots of learning games for children, not just for English and spelling, but also maths and science. On the Soft Schools website, you can find a range and number of phonics games and activities, plus a range of other activities for different school subjects. And here are some more phonics games to give you ideas on how you can teach phonics through games in the classroom. Here's another website called Knowledge Adventure, which has a huge list of games. You can choose a game according to grade, subject, and age. And that's the end of the lesson on using games to promote language learning. We hope you enjoyed it and gained some useful insight into how you can use games effectively in your classroom, making it more enjoyable for your students to learn and for you to teach. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.